At one point, the Mega Man franchise expanded across multiple genres, but one sub-series I never delved into was Battle Network. Unlike the other titles, this series was distinct, focusing more on character-heavy stories in a relatively modern setting. Thankfully, Capcom revealed the Legacy Collection for veterans to revisit Battle Network, and for newcomers, like myself, to finally give these titles a shot. After playing through Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection Volume 1, I'm pleased to say that amidst some gameplay confusion and odd design choices, the entries hold up relatively well. Before we get into the review, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism. The Mega Man Battle Network entries occur in an alternate history of the original Mega Man games where computer development has progressed to staggering heights, enabling the internet, which is known as the net, to become the hub of communication, business, and just about anything else you can possibly imagine. Utilizing such advanced technology also requires pioneering breakthroughs known as net navigators and personal information terminals. The former, more commonly known as net navis, are essentially programs that act as guides for humans and communicate via the previously mentioned terminals, shorthanded as PETs. The net is depicted as an explorable world of its own, loosely comparable to our own world, except with its own expected quirks. Protagonist Lan Hikari, an elementary schooler seeking to become a renowned and skillful net battler, which is a position where one battles virus programs with their net navi, naturally becomes quite familiar with this realm. He's quite a cocky and naive youth, though his net navi, Mega Man, tries his best to keep him in check. Throughout the 3 games in this collection, you, by proxy of Lan, traverse a multitude of net maps, thwart nation to worldwide catastrophes, and experience a rapidly evolving series of gameplay systems. Still, the gameplay fundamentals are the same no matter which title you're playing. Firstly, you explore the real world as Lan and the net as Mega Man. Lan's world really acts as a gameplay anchor for the net, as he can obtain gear and complete quests that directly tie into the data world. You can then enter or jack into the net via any device with an internet connection, highly encouraging exploration since countless items can be found in these areas. To elaborate, any random piece of technology you examine contains either its own net world or subspace connected to the rest of the net. That subspace connection is what defines the simultaneously compact vastness of Battle Network as a whole. You can quickly lose track of time traversing every outlet to the net and discovering how some locales are interwoven. Still, for an addictive and satisfying as this practice is, the lack of viewable maps can be unnecessarily frustrating. While the screens alone can be understood, the larger picture of how to reach certain points of the net via specific jack-in points seems like a needless oversight that could have been remedied in this modernized release. Granted, it's not like this fault ruined any of the games for me outright, but it is the most significant issue. Combat is another point of uniqueness, since it's a melding of tactical strategy and real-time action. Happening on a grid where the initial spots for you and your foes are 3x3, you can freely move Mega Man wherever you like, with the ability to shoot out projectiles while avoiding telegraphed enemy attacks. But the real spice makes itself collectively evident via chips, which are equipable skills you place in a folder that randomly distribute its contents mid-battle. Those of the same type can be equipped simultaneously while in fights, enabling consecutive usage. Further, the gauge at the top of the screen illustrates how long you must wait before you have access to the chip menu, and it gradually refills on its own throughout a fight. The chips are the crux of the gameplay and collecting, since shops provide them and enemies drop unique ones representative of themselves. Your playstyle is put on display here since you can approach battles in any way you want. Generally, you can hang back with projectiles and long-range chips, or take over opponents' tiles and get up close and personal with sword base or punching chips. Of course, some enemies are designed in ways reinforcing or even requiring particular strategies, but those instances teach you how to effectively embrace concepts you might have overlooked. Also regarding player individuality are the discoverable power-up chips, which can high-end 1 or 3 traits for Mega Man standard shots, which are rapidity, raw damage, and charging efficiency for the Mega Buster. The first Battle Network is endearingly simple since those traits are all of what the combat comprises. Health is also fully restored in between every encounter, so there's lacking consequence necessitating you to play defensively. For the most part, you can go all in all the time and be good to go, so the Sentry is by far the easiest. However, Battle Network 2 ups the ante considerably. Aside from altering elements of the chip system to encourage greater experimentation, such as wildcard chips consecutively usable alongside any other chip, styles are added. These mechanics replace the first game's most simplified and honestly forgettable armor and element-centric equipment, completely changing the playing field. Side quests are also far more prominent in the early hours, though only one can be taken at a time, which does feel needless. Mega Man Network 3 is a bit of a different beast that requires some explanation. This was the first title to be released with 2 separate versions, titled Blue and White in English. Akin to Pokemon, these 2 releases have the same storyline but different gameplay facets, with the most major being version-exclusive chips and style. Interestingly, the Legacy Collection has both white and blue selectable. Still, you can play whichever entry you'd like, as you'll have roughly the same experience. I played through the white release and did a bit of research on the changes that are offered in the blue. One of the most jarring alterations in Battle Network 3 is the UI. The menus are far more organized with cleaner chip division, which was honestly a relief for me because the chip menus were so congested in the previous 2 games. I often stuck to what I had in scenarios where I should have modified my setup. One last mechanic was the Navi Customizer that replaced the previous 2 games' power-up chips. This is a grid interface where blocks of differing sizes can be replaced with specific requirements, giving Mega Man useful abilities and stat enhancements. While the power-up chips are okay, the Navi Customizer is much more my style, as its creativity and on-the-fly management were immensely more engrossing and not simply a click once and be done with affair. When it comes to the enjoyment of these 3, or I guess 4 titles, Battle Network 3 is undeniably my favorite. The new gameplay systems, UI, and what I think is the less confusing map design made progress almost entirely void of frustration. Further, its narrative is leagues above the previous 2 titles, which I became increasingly aware of how despite there being a transparent childlike innocence to everything, especially given Lan's age, there are pretty grim and mature implications and events. The third game heavily embraces this multifaceted approach, which is likely why it compelled me the most. On the same token, Battle Network 2 was a fun time, save for some caveats. Even when taking my overall enjoyment into account, some dungeons were quite annoying, with what felt like harsh difficulty spikes, and the story pacing was a little erratic. Most critically, a few intriguing characters and concepts are introduced, with little time devoted to them. The mature tone I referenced in the third entry is here as well, though it's more head-scratching than anything else because it's not cleanly interwoven. When it comes to the map, a series of mini-dungeons in one of the early chapters had viruses on the field that stole HP and money and transported you to other areas. Thankfully, the currency is at least recoverable in the end, yet these locations were where I struggled the most across the entire collection since it required route memorization of the map. To reiterate, the absence of these maps is my most massive gripe with the collection. It seems like such a missed opportunity that they weren't added in these new releases. The encounter rate, which truly isn't that bad, feels far more unforgiving with the absence of these maps because getting lost just amplifies the factor. The first Battle Network is where I'm most mixed. Its story pacing is wacky and all over the place and its map design is borderline awful. The greater distinctions in the second and third game's area designs made navigation manageable with patience, but the first game's net was a taxing chore for me to fully understand the layouts of. One concern I had with these games, considering their abundance, was a potential over-reliance on familiar locations. However, I was pleasantly surprised by the introduction of new areas in every title, alongside fresh interpretations of the net. Moreover, a shared aspect I wasn't expecting was the amount of text that was offered. Countless environmental objects can be examined and several NPCs can be conversed with, adding genuine depth to each game. Of course, don't go in expecting anything on the same level of a Trails title. There's enough here to get immersed in the world. Regarding the bonus features of the Legacy Collection, you can activate Buster Max mode, which raises Mega Man's Mega Buster strength to get through practically any fight. This is an appreciated accessibility feature and excellent for those who simply want to experience the narrative. Aside from that, 3 button configurations are present, display settings for screen size and borders are here, and a high resolution filter can be selected. I'm aware that such filters are often unpopular, but I tend to favor them, and it's just an option, so you can stick with the original presentation if you desire. The gallery menu houses what you'd expect. Many illustrations of box art, character renders, concept art, and even promotional merchandising images are viewable, as well as a music player. These menus are sorted based on the respective games, so everything's well organized. Lastly, there are special download chips that you can redeem that were initially obtainable from events back when the original titles were released. They can be freely used here now, but they are pretty broken, so I advise restraint if you seek the intended challenge level. I should also mention that the Collective's title screen has a voiced Mega Man who provides random commentary. This element may appear minor, but it's a neat touch since I believe it's the same voice actor who dubbed Mega Man in the Battle Network anime. Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection Volume 1 is a messy, delightful package that's a decent bang for your buck. The 4 titles offer considerable content full of optional objectives and post-game events. The stories and characters, while hit or miss, become more engaging throughout the series. However, the lack of in-game maps bring forward a few issues. But if you can get past that, these are dense adventures coupled with celebratory Legacy Collection features that will delight any fan. Hell, there's even online battling for diehards. NoiseyPixel is giving Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection Volume 1 a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. NoiseyPixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out Patreon to help support our continued growth and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
NoiseyPixel.